Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and together with my co-host Mark Ronich of statewide news service and jbiztechvalley.com. Welcome, Mark.
And Rabbi, it's great to be here, and I got to tell you, we have a really special guest with us today.
All right.
Holly Brown. Holly is the executive director of the Palace Theater. It's a great, one of the oldest theaters in the state, and it used to be part of the vaudeville circuit, if I'm.
That's right.
So Holly, welcome to the Jewish
Thank
View.
you. I'm glad to be here.
Why don't you start with the history of the Palace Theater?
history of the Palace?
And we'll move up to the present
Okay.
and the future.
I can do that. The Palace was opened in 1931. It started out, as you said, as a movie house that RKO ran. And it was at that time, one of the largest movie houses in the country. Vaudeville was also a big part of the programming there. And it thrived for many years. And of course, that was during the Depression era, but the building did extremely well. Albany was bustling at that time, as you probably know. And the Palace was a big part of that. There were several other movie houses around at the same time, which one of them I think still exist in this region. Most of the others were torn down. So we're very fortunate, I feel, to have the Palace Theater, and that folks actually took the time to recognize its value historically and otherwise, and spent some funds to restore it in 2002.
And the Proctor's Theater in Schenectady is the other movie house I think you were referring to. But there used to be another Proctor's in Troy, and George Burns and Gracie Allen and
the
Milton
greats.
Berle, and a lot of the stars from vaudeville. Not that I was there, but that they performed there.
But we've heard of these people.
That's right.
Yes.
So it was an amazing time that they would come to Troy and then Albany and then go out to Schenectady.
Nice
and
route.
This was part of the circuit. I think Amsterdam or Pittsfield was also part of the circuit. So
It was.
Yeah,
it
that's
was.
great.
So it was a nice little run for folks up
Yeah.
in this area. So looking back at the history of the Palace, not only the physical building itself, but the people that have performed on that stage, it's hard to think of someone that has not set foot on that stage at one point or another. Everyone from Bob Hope to Bruce Springsteen in the 70s before he became,
A superstar.
the superstar he is, correct.
What kind of seating is it? Talking about,
We have 2,800 seats in the building. It's unique in that the orchestra level and the balcony level are fairly almost evenly split. So
orchestra is 1,500, balcony 1,300.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the great thing about the balcony being that large is when you sit in the balcony, you're much closer to the stage than you may be in some other theaters' balconies. So that makes it some people actually prefer to sit in the front of the balcony as opposed to down in the orchestra, because they get a broader view of what's happening. So.
And if you sit in the right spot in the balcony off to the side, you can see what's going on in the wings.
Yes.
And I always
You
like
can.
that, yeah. Because
Kinda
I always
adds a
like
little.
to see the extra stuff that goes on,
Right.
how they actually get out there and perform and keep their focus and their concentration and things like that. So.
Adds an
the
interesting
budget
element.
is super important. I mean, money, drives the world. What kind of budget do you have, and are you in the profit from all your performances?
I'm really happy to report that news. The Palace for quite a few years was in a bit of a difficult situation, but fortunately 2 years ago we were able to pull the Palace out of the red, and it's now operating in the black.
Oh, very good.
We do not, although the city does own the building, and we're very thankful for the opportunity to lease the building from the city. We do not receive any funding or anything like that from the city.
But you pay rent to the city?
Very minimal rent.
Minimal?
Yes,
Okay.
very minimal rent.
So that might be the trade-off?
That is the trade-off.
Okay.
That's exactly right. And it's a nice trade-off. But happily, being a nonprofit organization, a lot of people don't realize the Palace is a nonprofit. Many think the city owns and maintains the building. And in fact, we take care of the building, we take care of the programming, and we are hoping, once we have the audit done, to show about $100,000 surplus this last fiscal year.
Wow, and what's your total budget that you...
$1.3 million is our
that,
budget.
I know that people hear not-for-profit, they say, well, you shouldn't be making a profit, but that's not what it means.
That's right.
And you can make 5% over, 5% profit, I think, is the...
I believe that's,
so,
yeah.
So you're within that range.
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
And then, of course, those funds are put back into the building. The last fiscal year, we had a nice surplus, not quite as large as the one we have now. And through some grant funding and that surplus, we were able to invest in a digital projector.
Oh,
We've
that's
had
wonderful,
a 35
yeah.
millimeter projector in the building forever, which is fantastic, and we want to keep showing 35 millimeter films because some people actually prefer that. There's a nostalgia around that people enjoy. But the digital projector rather gives us an opportunity to show many things that we wouldn't be able to otherwise, especially since film is now starting to disappear.
Wear thin.
Yes.
I mean, what kind of
So to speak.
performances, like the average, I mean, how many movies would you say or live performances, orchestra go on during the year, and how many days are out of 365 you have performances?
We have about 125, last year we had about 125 nights booked. This year we'll have, this fiscal year coming up, about closer to 150.
Very good.
And that includes so that's a considerable jump from 2010 when the Palace was doing about 75 shows a year.
And that's where the surplus is coming from.
That's
The
right.
more you do, the more you
Yeah.
obviously
That's
you
right.
get.
So you've been here a couple of years, and you're here from Florida, Tampa, I believe.
Tampa, Florida.
And you were in other places in Florida.
I was.
Also. What's your feeling now that you've been here 2 years where you've experienced the 4 seasons twice?
Love it.
You love it.
I am in love with the seasons.
You don't find too many people from going from
I know.
Albany to Florida.
That's what
You're
everybody
you
says.
Jenny, yeah, but you don't go
Everybody
the
says.
other way. But I guess you're an exception.
I'm an
Are you-
exception to the rule,
are
and
you a
I'm very
skier?
happy. I have skied once, and that was a long time ago. But I can't wait to try it again. I keep meaning to get out the two winters that I've had here, but the winters typically are busier time
Oh, okay.
in the theater, so it's a little bit more difficult to get out. But this winter, I'm going to make sure I get out and,
All right,
and
good.
give it another
How
shot.
much staff do you have at the Palace?
We have I call our staff a mighty staff of
Yes.
10.
Okay.
So we are growing the organization, and that comes, of course, with being able to, afford to hire folks. As we increase the number of shows, obviously the demand on our staff also increases. But the goal is really to continue to expand our programming and really develop the building as more of it is very much a community space now. We host a lot of local dance recitals, graduations, those types of things. But we really want to expand the arts and education piece. We've recently partnered with Park Playhouse, which you may be familiar with,
Sure.
And
in Washington
Owen
Park. Owen Smith,
yeah.
who is he's doing double duty now as managing director for the Palace, and he's the producing artistic director at Park Playhouse. They have Oliver running currently, which is a fantastic show, and the kids are professional quality actors.
You want more?
That's right. I saw it a week ago, and the songs keep repeating in my head. They're so wonderful. But bringing that relationship with Park Playhouse more into the Palace has really helped us with our arts and education program. They have
The Albany Symphony is part of the. I mean, how is it part of? Do they rent or you?
Yeah, what's your relationship with the Albany Symphony Orchestra?
Yeah, right. So the Albany Symphony Orchestra calls the Palace home. We're very happy about that. David Allen Miller is an incredible talent, and we're very happy about that. The symphony does about 11 concerts in the building during the year.
Because they also go to the Troy Music Hall, don't they?
That's right.
Okay.
And then they do some limited things at RPI as well. But Troy Music Hall and the Palace are their two primary venues. And so we host their concerts that are included in their subscription series. We host, they do a couple of school time shows for children. Last year, David Allen Miller dressed up as a baseball pitcher. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
And all of the people in the orchestra dressed in baseball attire. And he themed the whole performance for these kids around that, so they could really understand and appreciate what makes up an orchestra and how everyone must work together.
Just interesting. We had David Allen Miller on the show, but I mean, I just feel I also love the orchestra. But you say 10 shows out of like 150 days. I mean, it's just that the real arts. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, the classic arts. Maybe that's the best word. the children do not appreciate, and so it's good to educate
Yes.
these kids to see what real, I shouldn't say real,
I know what you mean.
classic,
Sure.
real music is.
I
have to
agree.
ask you, after 2 years of being here, what do you think of the arts community here? Is it down? Is it vibrant? Is it needs improvement?
So is the whole Capital District
the
you're
Capital
asking?
District, yeah.
I think the arts community here is extremely robust. I was really quite amazed when I moved here and started exploring, the community in general. The amount of talent, first of all, in this region, from acting to singing, dance, is incredible. And again, I'm coming from a very different market. You may know Florida fairly well. And we do certainly have, our wonderful performing arts centers in Florida, but from a grassroots standpoint and a real community position of community support, this area is
Second to none?
It's incredible from any market that I have lived in. I mean, it's the number of outdoor festivals that go on, and the wonderful things that go on at Park Playhouse, as I mentioned, at Proctor's, of course, at SPAC.
And even in the smaller town parks, they
Yes.
have live performances in the town
I
parks
find it
around
amazing
yeah.
that all of this can get enough support, and I know that there are more grants and that type of thing here than there are in Florida. It seems to fund this type of thing.
What you say about Florida is interesting. I know we're all Americans, but you found any differences of the likes and dislikes of Floridians compared to Albanians? Like maybe they like more concerts, or just people are all the same whether you're in New York or Florida?
I do think it's different. I think there's more of an appreciation of the real, as you say, the real performing arts, or the really, what people expect to see or be a part of when you use the word performing arts. The classical music, the theater, the opera, the dance. I think there is more of an appreciation for that here. And the college programs, of course, support a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
I know that, unfortunately, a lot of the school programs across the country in those areas are getting cut, but that's where we're hoping, and I know other organizations such as ours are hoping to make a difference in really exposing kids to performing arts.
Once you say, my parents moved from Chicago. I'm from Chicago to Florida, and I remember that was one comment of a few of their friends. Of Florida, there aren't the arts as maybe up north. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know why. Maybe they're there to appreciate the good weather and
it's really the
everything
weather.
else. Really?
Everything is driven by the weather in Florida.
Your favorite performance?
Ever? My favorite performance, U2, the band, is one of my favorites. So that's certainly not the type of band you would see in a theater. However, I would have to say there's so many of them. Dire Straits,
Right.
Mark Knopfler is an amazing guitarist.
But the U2 360 concert is what you're,
I love
yeah.
that band. It's a great
About
experience.
major performers, do you feel a little bit stifled? That's how I was in a way leading on with the numbers. So it's like 2,500, 2,800 that you can't get, a good, top, notch performer saying, hey, the agent's going to say you don't have the
This capacity.
So a little bit, do you ever feel that, I want that person, and the agent says, no, you're too small for us?
The interesting thing about the industry overall is the days of artists that can really sell out stadiums and arenas.
Large arenas, yeah.
Is really, there are those artists still, right? Rolling Stones, Justin Timberlake, Bruce Springsteen.
The Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney. But there are many artists.
You had Ringo Starr.
Yeah, we
and the Times Union Center.
3 weeks later, had Paul McCartney. Isn't that crazy? We
and
had
they
two
both
Beatles.
Both sold out.
Yes, they did. But I think the wonderful thing is there's so much talent out there that, by virtue of the fact that they can't necessarily fill an arena or a stadium, certainly doesn't speak to the quality of the talent. And I think I actually feel that there is more programming available for a venue our size than there is for some of these larger venues.
It's interesting. Because that's more the way that things are leaning. You can't fill up like the Times Union Arena for 20,000 people for every.
I think And there's more competition as well for that.
just
You
so
know,
much.
back when they did the big arena and stadium shows, they didn't have as many. You know, it just seems like there's more competition now.
Well, it's interesting that the Paul McCartney concert and the Albany concert was the smallest venue that Paul McCartney played.
17,000?
15. They only had 15,000 seats,
That's
but
I didn't know
still,
that.
What I heard as well,
The,
yeah.
the smallest venue.
I
And-
thought the Times Union Arena was equal to a lot of the major league.
But he wasn't playing in those. But he was playing, you know, he was picking,
Right.
you know, the ones that were
That's
much
super
larger,
big.
but we were the smallest one.
I didn't know that.
And I wanted to ask you, you know, just, have you looked back on all the artists that have performed at the Palace? And has Robin Williams ever been?
He has.
I thought so.
He did. He performed at the Palace in 2008. I wasn't there at that time, and unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to see him do live stand-up, because what an amazing talent and what a tragic loss, really. But he did perform at the Palace. I understand that Mayor Jennings was there at the time, and they had quite a nice banter back and forth during the show. And it was a really special performance, from what I understand. Yeah.
There's people on staff who were there in 2008?
And we have 2 people that are still on staff that were there when he was in the building.
And they were talking to you about it, I presume, in
They
the past
were.
few days, yeah?
They were. We have a wonderful photograph hanging in our boardroom that he signed to the Palace when he was there,
Wow.
which is very nice.
That's special.
Talking
So
about
it is.
special performers, and we had, like I say, other directors or executive directors of other theaters. Do you have to cater to these people, or that's not your... I mean, you know, like, hey,
Yeah.
what's for dinner? You know, we're done, you know. And so some say, yeah, I got to take these people out, you know, and show them what Albany's all about, or they want to eat, and the staff, you know, they come with such a retinue.
Well, they have particular
You
things
know,
they
they
want in
do.
their dressing
Yeah.
rooms.
Sure,
And, yeah.
just like anybody
and
would,
you have to deal
especially.
with that.
Especially, I mean, when you think about these folks that are on tour, touring maybe 50 cities in the course of a 3 to 6 month period, they want to feel kind of at home when they get to these places, these venues where they perform. So trying to make it as much at home, feel like home to them as we
But
can.
also the staff, how much staff
The
do they
staff.
come with? I
It
mean,
depends. A lot of them come. Jerry Seinfeld, for example, is a great example. He travels with one person.
Really?
And this one person has been with him since he started his career. They are inseparable, and that's a case. And then, of course, there are other artists that come through that have an entourage of. Diana Ross is a good example, probably 12 people traveling with.
They take care of
And what are
something.
some of the strangest requests that you've had to deal with to have in the dressing room that they wanted? Was it lobster? Was it, gefilte fish? Was it?
That's a kosher catering over there.
Well-
I don't know how often that is.
All types of, from the vegan request to, vegetarian, kosher we've had as well.
Really?
Going back to speaking of Paul McCartney, when I did work in a large arena in Tampa, he came through, and of course he's a vegetarian, and
I don't know.
did not care to have any, not only no meat or any type of thing that he wouldn't normally eat, but the furniture, things around, no leather at all.
Really?
Very
I didn't
much
know
of
that.
Really?
purist
Yeah,
kind of when it comes to that type of thing. So it's interesting, and you certainly see a side of these folks' personalities that you may not see, otherwise.
It's
too.
interesting
Yeah.
to see him
It
as
is.
a person, not as a performer. One of the questions, and I've had this many years, and many people say they complain about the pricing of these. I mean, it's not your fault. I mean, if these people
Yeah.
come with a price tag, you got to pass it on to the consumer, of course. But some people complain. They say, "Well, they'll never fill up." Oh, Paul McCartney, and then in 28 minutes they're full. So I mean, the market is driven. If people are
right.
going to pay for it, and if a person doesn't want to pay for it, well, you're the loser. But I mean, again, it's a little bit dovetails with my other question about young people going to the theater or the concerts. It gets too high of a price. So
Right.
all right, the older person, who's made it in life, they're going to go there, and a 25-year-old, hey, I'm just starting out with a job I can't afford, even though it seems like they can afford every rock and roll star. But
Right.
I'm just saying, is there a cap? I mean, I guess you have to deal with the market. I mean, these people, performers, they ask for a price, and you got to pay for it.
That's right, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I think from market to market, ticket prices may vary a bit for the same artist, but typically they have fixed costs that they have to cover. And so the ticket price is really based on that. And I think as the industry, again, has changed over the years, I mean, I can certainly remember going to a concert that had the Eagles, Fleetwood Mac, and maybe 2 other bands for $15. You just don't see that anymore because I think there are so many folks that have their fingers in the pot now, from, you know, the managers, the tour managers, the record labels, the, you know, record distributors. I mean, and there's a lot of...
Sometimes the props, aren't they? I mean, I just
yes,
recently they
absolutely.
said, because it was interesting, Rolling Stones went to Israel, but I mean, it was a world tour anyway, and they say the prices were incredible, but they say it really wasn't even that much them. It's just, like you say, the retinue and the props. I don't know what they were doing there, but it would just cost so much money.
Yes.
Especially you're traveling overseas on top of everything.
Traveling
like
with that type of
equipment and
equipment
all
is
the people
very
and-
expensive to do.
I'm asking this delicately and gently, but how much of a markup on the ticket price that that they need to get do you need to get? Do you need to mark up the ticket so that you make a profit or you do well with a show?
You know, I don't know that I could come up with a percentage per se. We do rent the building to a promoter who's taking the risk on the show. So we have, of course, our expenses will be covered, and then we charge a rent for the building.
I see.
And that's just part of the expenses that any tour or any show has to cover
And
when
who-
they travel through.
And who do you rent it to?
We'll rent it to, there are many, which is the other thing I was so surprised about and happy to see in this area are the number of independent promoters. Really in Florida, in my experience there, Live Nation, AEG, those big monster promoters have really dominated the market for the most part. In this region, I work with 6 different promoters.
You see, it's this region, or these are national companies too?
These
Oh,
are
they're
regional
just only
folks.
regional? Well, that's very interesting.
It
Yeah.
is. It's wonderful. I think it's fantastic that exists still, because there's something special about working with, it's the difference of, is it your money or is it your company's money? And when it's your money and coming out of your pocket, the perspective and the desire for a show to do well, I think is different.
I remember when the Palace hosted the national premiere of Ironweed, which was shot in Albany primarily.
Right.
But I was there at the Palace at the time, and everyone was walking in with their fur coats and their diamonds and their jewels, and they were dressed to the nines, and they were going to go over to the hotel a couple blocks away and have a fancy smorgasbord of food. And you would think that the dichotomy of that with the Ironweed, was based on
Sure.
poverty and talked about the dregs of society in Albany. And here you had everyone coming in with
Dressed
all
to the nines,
dressed to
I
the
bet.
nines. It was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
everyone should have come in rags to
That's
be part of
ironic.
that.
That is ironic.
But I mean, you did have a national premiere. I mean, I thought that was a phenomenal event and put the Palace in a very nice spotlight.
Yes, for
You know,
sure.
I hope you have more
And
of those.
I do as well. With this market seems to be very active as well in the film industry. So we, obviously being a film house, we want to stay involved in that as well. We've had the opportunity to show a couple of, one premiere of Muhammad Ali's Greatest Fight. That was the film made about his fight with the Supreme Court with regard to being drafted into the military during the Vietnam War. And that was a great experience to be a part of, because the show, or the film, is now on HBO, or it was recently, but that was the first public viewing of that film, and a lot of it was shot here in Albany.
I didn't know.
And
I didn't know
a lot
that
of people, a lot of people didn't know. I didn't know about it either till someone brought it to my attention. But
How does going from being a marketing and communications director in Florida to executive director here in Albany, how is that different? I mean, I know what the 2 titles mean,
Sure.
but when you got a staff of 10, I mean, how does that, what was it like for you to have that transformation?
It was fantastic. A little scary sometimes, but really great. The benefit, I believe, to the marketing and communications area is really in this, I've been in this business for a long time, and I'm sure, as in other businesses, marketing really touches every piece of a business. You really have to understand, how the business operates and what your strengths and weaknesses are, and where your revenue sources are. So, in a sense, coming from that background, I had a good understanding of how an organization runs. So I was very thankful, as I said earlier, to have the opportunity to run such a fantastic building in this fantastic area. Very fortunate.
I see from the bio I have on you that you enjoy hiking.
I do.
Is that
This is
what
great.
excites you?
Yes, I love that.
Tell me where you've been around
love
here.
that.
Have you gone to Thatcher Park or have you gone to the Adirondacks? Where have you hiked?
I've hiked in Thatcher Park a few times. Potterkill Preserve, which is near Schenectady, kind of Rotterdam area, is a beautiful place to hike. Lots of waterfalls. And I remember the first time I went hiking in this area, I thought everything looked like the Lord of the Rings movies, because everything was just so green and there was water flowing everywhere, and it was nothing like you see in, Florida has its beautiful parts,
but
don't
it's
get me
flat.
wrong.
It has
but
its crocodiles and
Yeah.
alligators.
it does, and it does, and it's heat, which really
Right.
gets you after a while. Beautiful beaches, of course, but nothing like really the landscape here that is just so lush.
You
and
look like you're
beautiful.
in good shape. So is that something, have you been to the Adirondacks? Have you climbed any of the high peaks?
Not
or-
yet.
Not
We're
yet.
going to climb Giant with a friend of mine, which I understand is one of the, high peaks that is probably something I could do. I'm not like a professional mountain
Well,
person
maybe I'll
yet.
take you to
but-
Algonquin Mountain and we'll go on
Oh,
that.
okay.
Okay? All right.
Oh, great. Is that one of the high peaks
That's
also?
the second highest peak in the Mount Marcy is the highest.
Mark,
but-
you're in that good a shape?
I am.
Yeah,
all
I
right.
did,
There
I
you
did the
go.
Grand
Let's
Canyon
go.
2 years ago. From,
Really?
Yeah, 3 years ago, something like
Wow.
that. And I did the Grand Canyon from the north side to the south side and went down and up. And
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
so
That must have been an amazing
yeah,
experience.
I had to train to,
Sure.
a few months before, but yeah, that's, But I did Algonquin once, and when about 20, 30 years ago, but when you go down, when you start at the base, by the time you get to the top, the weather is totally different. It's you got to dress for rain
heard
or
that.
spritz or something that's precipitating
Right.
up there. Feel like you're in a cloud. It's that high. I when I went to Colorado, Breckenridge and Denver, they said, "Oh, you have hills over in New York. We don't."
That's right.
Our mountains start where yours end.
That's right.
So it's a different perspective of
Sure.
of air quality too.
That's
and
yes,
lack of
that's
air.
definitely true. Lack of air quality up there.
And
out
you grew
there.
up in Springfield, Illinois.
Springfield, Illinois.
Which
So
is the capital.
It is. So in
And-
another capital.
Another capital.
Love that. But we left there when I was 5 and moved
Oh.
to Miami. So I didn't have a whole lot of experience in the cold weather until I came
Well,
here,
now you're
other
back
than
over here.
Chicago.
Yeah.
a bit
Back to
in Chicago. But and Miami was a great place to grow up at the time. So I've been in Florida the large part of my life, which I
Not a
love
weather
Florida.
shock coming after.
So
But then
so many years.
What do we have to look forward to coming up in the next year at the Palace?
Palace.
Yeah.
We've got some great shows coming up. This will probably be our busiest season yet. Of course, we'll have the symphony in again. We are, in our partnership with Park Playhouse, we're presenting some school-time shows, arts and education shows. And Park Playhouse is actually going to present those for us. In the past, the Palace has brought in kind of an outside company from a national company to put on these children's shows, but Park Playhouse is right here in our backyard, and they're extremely talented, so we see the benefit of engaging them. So we'll have probably 8,000 children through the building for
That's
free.
good. And what about
come to
performances
see.
and art and rock concerts and things like that?
We're going to probably get a date with Martina McBride for all the
Okay.
country folks out
How,
there.
how in front, in the future dates, like from now, you have it booked, what, a year in advance, 6 months in advance? or-
It varies according to
Really?
the show. Typically, we don't find out really confirmed shows till maybe 6 months out if we're lucky. Right now, we're putting Ray LaMontagne, if you're familiar with him, on sale, and his concert's coming up already in beginning of October.
Three.
So
3 months, so 6 months ahead of time.
Okay.
We'll have the Moscow
Very
Ballet
good. You
in
know, Ollie,
again.
we're out of time.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
want to give you, I always give them the rabbis, I have to give a blessing, that's part of the job.
Great.
And that you're doing incredible success in the few years you're here, and glad you
Thank you.
enjoy the Capital District. And we just give you a blessing, you should continue to grow and to do good things in the palace for all the people really in the Capital District that enjoy this, and all do it with a good health.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And best of success. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.